Greetings from Siberia. So yesterday we looked at the upstairs of the apartment, the upstairs of the milk processing plant facility, the apartment where my family and I now live. Thankfully, after having spent 2 years in the yurt, now we're in the house. That's wonderful. And one of the things that makes the house so wonderful is this beautiful, wonderful outside boiler. So it's a wood-burning boiler that sits outside the house. For a lot of American viewers, especially in the northern reaches of the United States, Canada, Alaska, this is something that's not uncommon. In Russia, this is kind of a new thing. We were approached by some believers, some brothers over who live in Novokuznetsk, a few hundred miles, I don't know, almost 1,000 kilometers from here, who build these. They have a boiler building company, and he makes these boilers and is trying to introduce them into Russia. So we're actually testing it out for him and are so far really, really, really happy. So this boiler allows us to set the temperature and has an electric fan. You just saw it come on just a few seconds ago. Whenever the temperature gets below a certain setting, then the fan comes on and causes it to flare up and raise the temperature. So we can actually stoke the boiler with firewood for basically 24 hours. So you stuff it in there and it basically burns for a whole 24 hours without having to ever stoke it again. So this boiler has been working all winter long, has never ever gone out. It's the eternal fire which keeps the house warm. We've also been putting up a lot of firewood. So this year we put up about 88 cubic meters of firewood, which I don't even know what that is in cords at all. I'm not going to try to convert that on the fly. I'll write it down in the description what 88 cubic meters is. And that is a lot of firewood, but that's about 2 years worth of firewood stockpile. And the reason why you always want to have 2 years stockpiled ahead of time is because the efficiency of any fire, of any stove or boiler, no matter what you're using, goes down dramatically when you're burning wet wood. So the idea is you build up a 2 years stockpile of firewood the first year, if you can, and then you've always got at least 1 year of dry wood to work from, and then you use up one year of dry wood, and then you restock that stock, and you're always on a rotation to where you're using the dry wood. So right now we are really thrilled with this particular boiler. It works really well. It basically heats up water. It's got a water jacket or a antifreeze jacket, and it heats up antifreeze and sends it into the house. And now we'll go downstairs and take a look at how that system works. So now we're actually in the basement of the milk kitchen, milk processing plant, which has the apartment upstairs. And one thing that I'd like to talk about is that this building is built on these stumps, these pillars, wooden pillars. There's a funny little loophole in the Russian agricultural land usage laws that says that you can build temporary buildings. And the way to define temporary buildings is buildings that don't have a concrete foundation. So we've been building all of our buildings on basically Siberian larch pilings. So that's a very interesting thing. But we have this crawl space under here, this space. It's not really a crawl space. It's almost kind of like a semi-basement, not quite tall enough to be a full basement, but we've got all of our the inner workings, the belly of the beast, so to speak. So right here is the incoming and outgoing feeds on our hydronic hot water heating system. Like I said, just showed a few seconds ago, the boiler is outside, wood-burning stove, does great. And then the water, actually it's an antifreeze, comes in from the wood-burning stove into the building and then goes into the distribution. So we've got hot water heating radiators upstairs, hot water heating radiators downstairs, and domestic hot water. So that's the sends, and then the receives come back after they've already gone and circulated through the system and cooled off, and they go back through the pump, circulation pump, into the hydronic, into the outside boiler. So here's our pressure tank, little pressure tank that keeps the system pressurized and circulating really well. So that's the system right there. Like I said in one of my previous videos, because we're using alternative energy, we're using solar power, we try to keep our power consumption at a minimal. So this entire system just uses this one circulation pump, and that's pretty small consumption. We get both domestic hot water, and eventually we'll get our heat necessary for making cheese using the cheese making pot contraption upstairs, of which we'll talk about more later. But we get our domestic hot water also from outside because the antifreeze comes into the system here and goes into this boiler. This is another interesting boiler. So basically a hot water heater that instead of using electricity, it's got a heat, what's it called in English, converter built into the boiler tank, and that transfers the heat from the antifreeze into domestic hot water. So then the domestic hot water then is distributed out throughout the house. So it looks complicated right now because you've got all these sends and receives and all that, but actually it's a pretty simple system. Hydronic heat, I am a super major fan of hydronic heat. It allows you to put the heat where you want it, and it doesn't move around so much as with, let's say, forced air. So hydronic heat is really, most Russians in the cities and most Russians in the villages use either thermal mass heat, so like a Russian masonry stove, or some kind of combination of thermal mass and hydronic. Hydronic is a very wonderful way to go. So right now I'm going to walk over to the other corner real quick and show you the cold water system, the domestic drinking water, fresh water system. So we've got the washing machine going on right above our heads. I don't know if you can hear much of what I'm saying. The centrifuge cycle. But right here, basically, we have our cold water system. So as you can see behind me, I've got 3 IBC tanks set up here. They're set up in parallel with each other so that when you put water into one tank, it fills up all 3 tanks. And some other time, I'll show you how we get water up here from the spring, how we set it up to get water up to the house from the spring. But basically, after the water gets here and is pumped into these receiving tanks, the jet pump takes it and puts it into the domestic freshwater system. Again, it looks complicated, but it's pretty simple. You've got the jet pump. The jet pump then puts it into the cold water system. On the cold water system, we have a big pressure tank. That's a 200-liter balloon pressure tank. What that allows for is, in case of power outages or in case of some trouble with the pump or anything, you have about a day to 2 days worth of reserve of water in the pressure tank. So if anyone who's preppers like to watch this, you can use that same kind of pressure tank system in your own house, no matter if you have city water or your own private water, as a good backup to keep you from just running dry right when the pressure tank goes out. So I like that. So the pressure tank then pressurizes the system, and again, we have different sends for the cold water, fresh water. So it goes to the kitchen, goes to the meat kitchen, the milk kitchen, bathroom, and then a cold water line that goes to the domestic hot water to get heated up. So basically, it's very looks kind of complex, all the piping and everything, but it's actually pretty simple system. System mostly I designed, and mostly Andre, our co-worker and helper here, put in. The previous 2 systems in Taquachet and Asinovi, I put in myself, so I could have done it, but he does a much more beautiful job than I do. My work always looks pretty nasty, but it's functional. So, but anyway, this is a system here in the house. So that's just a quick overview of what we've gotten done. Hopefully in the future, again, like I said, the ground level of this building will be used to make our cheese and package and process all of our meat products. We live upstairs, and this is kind of the basement area of how everything works together. Everything we try to do with what's available here in country. We're not trying to bring anything in containers from the United States or anything like that, because we want to be both scalable, both up and down. So all of our solutions, things that we've figured out to do, we want them to be able to scale both up and down to be duplicatable. So we're trying to stay within budget and trying to do things smart, but not be, penny wise and dollar foolish. So that's basically what we've gotten done. So I hope that was interesting and hope maybe useful. So as I always say in my Russian language YouTube channels, thank you guys so much for watching, and never forget, the earth is the Lord's and everything on it.